This is the Comics Alternative Interviews, a conversation with Grace Ellisand Shae Beagle. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews. I'm Derek, and on this show I talk with Grace Ellisand Shae Beagle about their Image Comics series, Moonstruck, specifically the release of the series' first trade. But before we listen to that conversation, I want to let all of you know that this episode of the Comics Alternative Interviews is brought to you by the great folks at Discount Comic Book Service. Go to their website, dcbservice.com, for all of your comics pre-ordering needs. There, you're going to find all DC, Marvel, Image, and Dark Horse titles at 40% off of the cover price if you pre-order. For all of the other publishers, you'll find that those discounts are anywhere from 20 to 35% off of the cover price, and every single month you're going to find some unbelievable specials. Sometimes those specials could be as much as 45% off of the cover price, sometimes 50% off of the cover, but every now and again you can find discounts that go higher than that. And if you go to DCB Service right now, you'll find the first Moonstruck trade at 40% off of the cover price. Believe it or not, you can get this first volume for the low introductory price of only $5.99. You can also get the latest issue of the series, number 8, at a 40% discount. These great prices shouldn't be surprising at Discount Comic Book Service, because discount is in their name. So remember to go to dcbservice.com and check out their prices. They'll take care of all of your comics pre-ordering needs. And after you do get your comics there, please be sure to send them an email and tell them that the two guys with PhDs sent you. Mythical figures, anthropomorphic characters, and a heavy dose of magic, all set in a contemporary urban landscape, complete with coffee houses, mobile devices, and garage bands. This is the world of Moonstruck, a series that began last year and coming out of Image Comics. The writer and artist of the series, Grace Ellisand Shae Beagle, were kind enough to come on the Comics Alternative to talk with me about the completion of the first narrative arc and what we might expect with the second. These two creators have known each other for a long time and, along with their editor and designer Lauren McCubbin, have experienced a curious incubation period for their project. I talk with Grace and Shae about the origins of Moonstruck, their unique mix of fantasy and contemporary cultural concerns, the process of collaboration, and their attempts to build a reading community not only by their storytelling, but also through social media and a keen understanding of their target audience. I had a fun time getting to know Shae and Grace, and I'd like to share that conversation with you right now. I'm happy to have on the Comics Alternative Grace Ellisand Shae Beagle. They are the creative team, the writer and the illustrator of Moonstruck from Image Comics, and the first trade of that series came out just recently. Shae, Grace, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to arrange this. And it's unfortunate that your editor and the designer for Moonstruck, Lauren, couldn't join us. I know that was the original intent, but, the more people you include in an interview, the more schedules you have to juggle. And when we finally found a rough date and time to record, Lauren just said, well, I don't have to be there. Grace, Shae, you can handle it.
I hope we don't let her down.
I hope we don't. We always like having Lauren in case we don't know what to say.
Well, she could be here in spirit. And maybe the word spirit would be an interesting segue into discussing Moonstruck.
Oh, that was nice. That was real professional.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious where this idea came from.
Shae, do you want to field this one?
Yeah. Well, Moonstruck originally started as a 5-page short comic for a comics anthology that I was doing in college with some classmates in this class called the
Comics Practicum.
Yeah, the Comics Practicum class. We had all student artists, and the writers for the scripts of this comic anthology were all professionals in the field and got to work with the students to make 5-page short comics to put in an anthology called Spitball. And that's through Columbus College of Art and Design. So my second year of doing that, I got paired up with Grace for the script that was Moonstruck. And I thought it was just super adorable and super fun. And we worked together really well. And our professor for that class, who is our editor on the book now, Lauren, said, like, hey, you guys want to put together some kind of pitch, like as a long form comic for this, because there's so much to this world that you could build upon. And, we just ended up doing that. And here we are.
So all of you met in school?
While I was in school.
Yeah, I was not in school, but I live close to the school, and it was really convenient. I think if I had lived somewhere else, it probably wouldn't have worked out. But the fact that we could all meet up at a coffee shop and talk about the book was really very appealing.
And then you say, Shae, that Lauren was your professor.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I had. She'd been my professor since freshman year. I had her for a color theory class, and our final was actually to make a comic, and I think that's kind of where I started picking up on doing comics for a living, which was really cool. So it's nice that I get to work with her now.
Well, okay, so how did it come about that you brought Kate Leth into at least this first story arc?
Well, I'm really interested in form and the form of comics and using all of the tools that you have in front of you. So I was really interested in doing, the best way to describe it is kind of like a Watchmen style thing, which is a really funny comparison for a book like this. But I was interested in doing a story within a story that would bolster the characters. It seems like it's pretty divided 50-50 about whether or not it's successful, but we're working on it. And I really like it, so I don't really care what anyone else thinks. Plus, I really wanted to work with a bunch of different artists. I'm pretty young in this field, and so is Shae, and I want to make connections. I want to work with as many people as I can.
Well, Grace, you got a really good start several years ago with Lumberjanes.
Yes.
I mean, that was a big splash, and I'm sure that opportunity has introduced you to a variety of different creators.
Oh, for sure. That's how I met Kate. Kate did the original badges on the Lumberjanes series. Mm-hmm. So that was, I guess we knew each other before that, but that was the first time we'd worked together, and it was a positive experience. So,
okay. So,
bring everybody in.
Shae was talking about how you all came together, how the team got together for Moonstruck, but where did the idea come from? Because it really is unique. It's like you've mashed up a number of different concepts together in a way that really works well.
Oh, I really wish that I had a better answer for this. I'm not really sure where it came from. It came from wanting to finish the 5-page script mostly, and thinking about what would happen in a 5-page script. I knew there was going to be a twist a couple pages in, and then a final twist on the last page. And thinking about the language of comics, you don't have very much time to establish a world in 5 pages. So I wanted to start with something that basically anyone who reads this will be familiar with, a coffee shop. You know what to expect. The first twist will be kind of upending that a little bit. Not everything is as it seems. It's a little disorienting, and then the last twist is on top of that. And I don't really know how I landed on werewolves and everyone's a mythical creature, just through brainstorming and trial and error, and here we are. I'm sorry, it's not a very good answer. I should try to find my notes or something.
So, I mean, you're right. I mean, we have mythological figures, we have anthropomorphism, we have magic thrown in. And on top of that, we have this, as you call it, a Watchmen-esque extra narrative that's embedded in your main storyline. And by the way, for those who haven't had the good fortune of reading any of the issues of Moonstruck, this other story that Kate Leth illustrated is is one of a series of books that your main character, Julie, absolutely loves. And the title of this book is Pleasant Mountain Sisters. And by the way, I love the abbreviation there.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so we see, I think, across all 5 of the original issues, which are now collected in this trade, what is it, like 1 page in each issue that Leth illustrated that's supposed to be what Julie is reading and responding to and even marking up.
Yes. Yeah. Her ultimate goal is she wants to be a writer for this series. So I wanted to kind of explore like how the media we consume affects us and like how it impacts our personalities, especially when you're like really, really into something.
So I'm curious about the process of creation. Is it that, Grace, you do the writing and then Shae takes the script and then interprets it in illustrated form? Or do you guys go more back and forth in a collaborative manner in terms of both the storyline and also in terms of what the visual should look like?
Well, it's pretty straightforward once we get to the scripting part. It's exactly as you described. It's like I write it and Shae draws it up. We hit some things back and forth a little bit in terms to like make things more clear. Like I'm very open to feedback from Shae, and I hope that Shae is open to feedback from me. It seems like,
of course,
yes. I love you, Shae. But we work on the general storylines together. You know, you gotta make sure everyone in the crew is on board with where the ship is heading. And
you guys still live close to one another?
Close-ish, not as much anymore since Shae stabbed me in the heart and moved away.
I moved for cheaper rent.
Yeah,
but it's still I'm living in northern Kentucky, just kind of south of Cincinnati, so it's not just like not even 2 hours from Columbus. I could still come up and visit.
Right, exactly, Shae. You can still come up and visit.
I can. Let's discuss this after the podcast.
I'm going to turn into like a nagging grandparent. Why don't you ever visit me? You never call.
But it's not like you guys on a regular basis or semi-regular basis meet at a coffee shop or wherever to discuss the script.
Oh, we used to. We used to have a standing meeting when Shae lived in Columbus. Now it's tougher. It's definitely tougher, which has been a learning experience. But it's still good. It's good. The internet's great.
Do you use the phone, Skype, Facebook?
Oh, we're big on Slack.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Slack.
Slack's
okay.
That.
Now, we've been talking around Moonstruck, but for those who may not be acquainted with this title, how would you describe this to the uninitiated?
Oh, it's been a while since I've tried to do this little pitch. Shae, do you want to try it, Shae?
I am way out of practice.
Okay, it's okay. There's like a list of adjectives that we like to use. I don't remember all of them, but it's a mythical romance, coffee, werewolf mythology story. But it's like all ages, YA type of deal. It's very fun. It's very layered. I recently read a review that said we were doing a lot for an all ages book, which I think is a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very fun, very cute book. But it's very character driven. A lot of werewolves. It's great.
And in fact, the two main characters in this story, Julie and then her, I guess, significant other, her love interest, Selena, are both werewolves, but we don't know that at first. At least we're not too sure about Selena. With Julie, because I remember when that first issue came out, we actually reviewed it on the Comics Alternative back last summer. It wasn't until, I guess, the end of that first issue that we realized what Julie was. Because with some of the other characters, like Chet, for instance, who's another main character, we know that he's a centaur because we see that.
Right. It feeds into their personalities, too, and how we were thinking about them. Because Chet is a centaur. There's no way to, like, hide that. They just kind of are a centaur in your face all the time. But Julie, maybe less in your face.
Yeah.
Being a wolf.
And the thing about Chet is that they're, right there and so flamboyant, probably the most colorful character in this entire series. And I guess their personality in many ways goes hand in hand with the combined nature of what a centaur actually is.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus, he makes a lot of butt comments.
Oh, exactly. You got to balance out all those like highbrow mythology jokes with a lot of like, where's my butt jokes? That's what makes it all ages.
So basically what you have going on in this first story arc is that Julie and Selena have just, I guess, recently met. They're starting to really get attached to one another. They end up going to a magic show. And at this magic show, that's where we're introduced to the big bads of this first arc. And as a result of their attending this magic show, something happens to Chet. And then to try to get over or recover what Chet undergoes, that kind of drives the plot for the rest of the series. Is that a decent enough encapsulation?
I think that's great. That's a great description.
Yeah. But along the way, though, there's a very colorful, and I keep using the word colorful. Maybe it's a testament to your art, Shae.
Thank you.
A number of colorful characters that we see. I already mentioned Chet, but we get a Medusa character, Lindy.
Yes.
Who has anger issues, I guess, is an understatement.
She's working on it. She's in therapy.
Well, we actually do see her in some kind of therapeutic almost situation. And then there's Mark, who is, kind of a member of the band that Lindy is heading. And then there's Cassie, appropriately enough, named Cassandra, who is, I guess, a soothsayer. She has the ability. And in fact, one of the things I really enjoyed about this first arc is this character, Cassie, in how her utterances throughout, starting in that first issue, or I guess in the trade, the first chapter, kind of drives the mystery of what will happen next. We go more into it in the second arc, but she is like she's a presence the entire time without being there necessarily. That's what we're going for. And I always loved any time in this story where she goes into a trance and begins to prophesize, because that's when the art gets really creepy and spooky and colorful, even more so than it normally is.
Oh yeah, Shae's great. I like getting weird. It's great.
I like being able to do Cass's vision scenes just because I can just go wild, kind of really just go off script and off model for everything, and have fun.
Will we find more of that in the next story arc?
Definitely, yeah. We start getting into more of like where Cass's visions come from and why they're a little different each time. Cass is definitely playing a similar role in the next arc, but in a more clearly defined way. We're starting to really get into the mythology of it all.
Now, I know when it comes to, not just image titles, but I guess comic titles in a broader sense, especially when they're creator owned, sometimes it's touch and go as to whether you will have anything after the first story arc, but we will get more of Moonstruck that you're currently working on, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Now, I don't want you to give anything away, but what can we anticipate in what will, I guess, eventually be the next volume of Moonstruck?
All those little frat fairies that are always flying around in the first arc, they are center stage in the second arc. because Moonstruck is so much like world building is another like really big tenet of this book. This arc, we start to get more into like the college that a lot of the characters go to or went to at one time. So we see a lot of the fraternity life, we'll say.
Yeah, you mentioned this idea of world building. That's one of the things that struck me about this first volume of Moonstruck. There was a mentioning of the college. We saw that parade about halfway through, which included a lot of the people from the mythological figures from the college. But outside of that, we didn't get much information. So there's enough of a taste without, I guess, satisfying any hunger that you're going to feed into, so to speak. Probably a lousy pun in the second volume.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, I'm curious, why Image Comics? And the reason I'm asking this, especially directed at you, Grace, you had such success at Lumberjanes. And I remember when I saw quite a number of months ago, the first issue of Moonstruck solicited, read the description. I thought, okay, this is by, one of the creators of Lumberjanes. It has a Lumberjanes-ish feel to it, but it's an Image title. And when my co-host back in the summer and I discussed Moonstruck #1 on the podcast, we thought, well, maybe the reason why it's an Image is because it's going to be for maybe younger readers, but younger readers. But I have to tell you, though, reading now the entirety of the first arc, I don't get the sense that this is a mature title, that the audience for Moonstruck may be similar to the audience for Lumberjanes in a variety of ways. So that has me wondering, why go with Image and not Boom Studios?
Well, Image, frankly, has a really incredible deal for creators. So that's definitely part of it. In addition to the fact that Image really is so hands-off that they'll let us get really weird. So we can have like really, really dark moments that wouldn't necessarily fit with like the Lumberjanes type crowd, like inherently. We can really tell the story the way that we want to tell it. Yeah, I would say that the target audience for this is like people who have kind of like graduated from Lumberjanes in the way that like I have graduated from Lumberjanes. Yeah, I don't really know. It really made sense to do it at Image, because we could do whatever we wanted without worrying too much about like directly hitting a demographic. We could just do a story, and if it hit, then it hit.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also caught them at a good time. They were looking for kind of a young adult, all ages book, and we had that pitch ready.
Right, exactly. And Eric has been so great.
Mm-hmm.
He's very supportive.
That's great. And, there is something unique about Moonstruck. I'm not suggesting that many of the titles at Image seem to be very similar one to the other, but there is a kind of story type that you will find often in Image. This is very different. And it's interesting, Grace, when you mentioned the potential for doing darker things in Moonstruck. There are those moments, and for me, they seem to come about whenever Cassie's around, that there is the potential for some kind of darkness. And even in the visuals, Shae, the way that you draw those Cassandra moments, they do become darker in terms of the visual tone.
Exactly. We had to talk to some retailers about moving our book away from the other Image titles because it wasn't moving. Because the people that read Image books aren't necessarily the same as the people who would read Moonstruck. Like the general vibe of Image is more like murders and bank robbers and all of that, which is great. I mean, there are some really fantastic Image books, obviously. But I think we've learned along the way that perhaps this book is a little different from all of their other ones and should maybe be somewhere different in the store.
Where would you ideally like for Moonstruck to be placed in comic shops?
Well, I think it depends on how the store is organized. I know it was selling really well for people when they put it right up front.
Hint for listeners.
I think with wherever you're keeping your like all ages stuff would probably do better than when it's surrounded by blood.
So maybe along with some of the other Boom Studios titles or Archie, things of that sort.
Right.
In the comic shops that I usually go to, those titles are toward the front part of the store.
Right. Exactly. Right up front. If you could just frame Moonstruck. Yeah.
Maybe I should target this episode at retailers.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Along with the kind of story that you're telling for, let's say, a kind of a similar yet more, if we want to call it a graduated audience that you had earlier, Grace, with Lumberjanes, it seems to me that you guys have come to Moonstruck with what seems to be a ready-made fan base, because I was struck when that first issue came out that you already had a collection of fan art that people had contributed.
Now these were mostly from some of my friends in college, and I had just been showing them like what I'd been working on, and they got really excited about it. And I mentioned that we wanted to have a fan art page in the back of our book, and they were like, "I want to be a part of that right now." So it was kind of mostly people that knew me, I guess.
So
how could you not be a fan of Shae's art, though? It's so good.
Yeah, I was about to say one could call this prefab fan base. But on the other hand, they're your friends, Shae, but they're fans.
Yeah.
So it is fan art.
Yeah, it is. So they just got the advanced copy before most.
Okay, so after the first one or two issues, when I guess your fan base became less familiar with you, or who weren't as familiar with you guys personally, how did it progress? How did it grow? Because you continued to get contributions from people who love the story. Yeah.
Mostly, this is my first book, so I'm really excited about, looking to see what other people are doing, and, checking up on tags on social media and seeing if people are drawing anything, because that's what I did when I was first starting drawing. I would always draw from the stuff that I would read and watch. And I've just been reaching out to the artists that have been posting and saying like, hey, we would really like to have this in the back of the book. Do you mind if we do that and, credit you and make sure that all's good? We want to make sure your name's put to this and whatever social you want post attached to it. And everyone's been really excited about that. And I don't know, I like to do little personal outreaches like that.
You're really good at it. Everyone loves you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, what something like that does is, at least for me as a reader, it contributed to that, I guess, the experience that I had mentioned earlier. It seemed like you had, even with this first issue, a ready-made fan base. But it creates a sense of community, and what that seems to do is to give your story or your story world more strength. Because people are going to read contributions from others, they're going to see the fan art, the letters and whatnot, and think, this is really caught on with a lot of people. I'm going to jump on board as well.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice.
Now, along with the fan art section that you would include in the individual issues, you also had regularly a couple of other features. There was Ask a Know-It-All, which I found really, really funny. And then,
nice. I think you're the first person to ever bring that up. I feel so satisfied.
Really? No one else has mentioned Ask a Know-It-All?
Literally no one has ever brought that up.
Okay, for those who may not have read individual,
so hard for it. Sorry, I got so excited.
Oh, okay. Hey, get excited. So, for those who may not know, what is an Ask a Know-It-All section?
It's like it's like an advice column where we get reader questions, but mostly they're questions from us because people don't contribute questions because no one cares about this except for me. So it's like you ask a monster a question and they give their best advice. But we couldn't call it Ask a Monster because monster is like kind of not a nice thing to say in this world. So we changed it to Ask a Know-It-All. And so we get things like, God, now I can't even remember what some of the ones in the first arc were. Do you remember, Derek?
Let me see. One I have up right now is, it says this month's Know-It-All is Kylie Muller, a popular lifestyle and beauty vlogger, better known for confetti. And does that?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's a Bigfoot, like a Sasquatch. She's obsessed with her self-image because whenever anyone tries to take a picture of her, it doesn't come out right.
And obviously, as you mentioned, these are fictional, but that adds to the humor, I think.
Yeah, I would not recommend taking any of their advice. It's all very horrible. But the idea is it's like world building. We're like talking to characters who are outside of the story. Another
regular feature that you had in the individual issues were brief, like 1 or 2 page, I guess, interviews that you would have with a fellow creator.
Yes.
Where did this idea come from?
Well, honestly, it came from the fact that we have an all-white creative team and we're doing a story about people of color, and that seems really terrible. So we wanted to bring in some women of color, feature them, pay them for their art, and like build our community, you know?
Okay. These extra features, I have a question. Now, I've gotten the individual issues of Moonstruck, and the trade, I guess the copy of the trade that I received is a PDF that I got from your publicist. And when I was going through the trade, I was surprised to see the Ask a Know-It-All sections included after each chapter. And at first I thought, well, maybe they're including those in the trade. But then I also see the covers that are included in their entirety in this PDF that I received. And I thought, well, maybe this is just a collection of the first 5 issues for, early reviewers, and the Ask a Know-It-All section isn't in the trade, is it?
Shae, do you know?
I would have to grab my copy. Yeah, actually, give me a second and I'll look.
I have not held a physical copy of this trade yet.
Because, I like these, but I wondered if they're in the trade, what that would do to, let's say, the story momentum. So you would end a chapter, and then you'd have an Ask a Know-It-All section, and then you'd have the next chapter. I don't think it takes away from the story at all, but I didn't know if that was intended or if that was just what I received in this early review PDF.
Yeah, the Ask a Know-It-Alls are in the print version, too.
In the trade?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Do they come after each chapter?
Yep. Seems like they do. And then the cover art afterwards, and then into the new chapter.
Okay, so apparently the PDF that I received is a layout for the actual trade, not just all 5 of those issues collected. So the Ask a Know-It-All section is there, which really makes sense since you're dealing with this fictional world and getting advice from monsters, quote-unquote monsters. But you don't have those brief interviews in the trade.
Yeah, well, we have to leave something for some sort of incentive for people to buy the single issues.
Oh, I agree. And I wouldn't blame you if you didn't include the Ask a Know-It-All in the trade because, I have to admit that over the past several years, having to watch my budget, I have gone less and less with single issues and have become a trade waiter. But if you give readers something different in the individual issues, then not only will they be more apt to get the single issues, but maybe even double dip, getting the issues and the trade.
Ideally, yeah. I
really appreciated when a creator gives you something in single issues that you don't get in the trade. I don't know. It's just more value for what you're doing. I know that Matt Kent does that a lot with his comics. Thus, I'm more apt to get single issues of the series that Matt Kent works on instead of just waiting for the trade.
Yeah. I kind of jump back and forth between, getting trades and getting single issues because I like the back matter and I like to see all the stuff that makes it into the single issues, but may not necessarily make it into the trade. And it really I don't know, it helps you see what the creative team cares about, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to know. I like to know what they care about, and I like to see what it gets filled with and how that helps build the story or build the community around the story and stuff like that.
And then you have the example of, again, your Ask a Know-It-All section, which adds to the tone of your story. And then that supplementary interview that you get in the individual issues. I think that says a lot about what you guys are up to. I know that there's no way of telling how long this could go on for, because you're going to have to see what kind of reaction you continue to get from your readership. But ideally, from what you guys know of your project now, how long would you like for Moonstruck to go on for?
I want to do 4 arcs at least. But I have the first 4. I have a pretty good idea of what I want to happen in them. And I think 4 arcs would be a very complete story, a complete and satisfying story.
But you have a backup plan just in case?
Oh,
Heaven
yeah.
forbid.
Oh, yeah. You gotta be ready to pull the parachute at any time in comics.
So this is the first time that the two of you have worked together. Do you have plans, let's say, beyond Moonstruck or in addition to Moonstruck, of something else that you'll work on together?
We've talked about it.
Yeah, at some point, I think we talked about doing a graphic novel together.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be pretty fun. But Shae's great. I would love to work.
And I would love to work with Grace, because I love Grace.
I'll go on.
Oh, go on.
I'm feeling the love through the microphone. Well, if you guys decide to do an original graphic novel, it just strikes me that given what I've seen in this first volume of Moonstruck, that a publisher like First Second would be perfect for the kind of storytelling that you're doing.
Oh, I'm going to forward this to First Second.
No, that would be so great.
Yeah.
I mean, they do incredible works, and I mean, not everything that they do is for a younger readership, but a lot of it is. And so that's one of the first publishers that would come to mind, given what I see in Moonstruck. Yeah,
for sure. I don't think I've ever read anything from First Second that I didn't love. They're very good. I like them a lot. I've only heard good things about working with them as well. Mm-hmm. So if you're out there for a second, hit us up.
Gina, if you're listening to this, hint, hint. Now, one of the things I remember about reading the individual issues of Moonstruck, especially the ones that came out last year, because I think the 5th issue came out in January, is that correct?
Yes, I have no idea. It's all such a blur.
Oh, I'm sure. But most of it was last year. But I remember in the back of each issue, sometimes you'd make comments on what was going on and where you guys were. So, for instance, you'd mentioned, I think maybe in that first issue, that you're about to head to San Diego, and then you've been at other cons publicizing the new series. But now that the trade's out, what conventions are you going to be attending either separately or together to help get the word out about Moonstruck?
What are you doing, Shae? What's your life like these days?
I don't know, because I've been wanting to do more conventions recently. But right now we're focusing on new issues and everything like that. We had plans for FlameCon last I heard.
Yeah, FlameCon. We're going to the American Library Association convention in New Orleans in June. Wow. That'll be fun. I'm going to TCAF. I've never been to TCAF. I'm very excited. Yeah, we're taking it pretty light on the cons right now, just because we're behind and we have to catch up.
Well, I'm jealous of you going to TCAF.
Yeah, is it good?
I don't know. I've heard that it's great. I've never been. I've
also heard that it's great.
I wanted to go this year, but I'm not going to be able to.
Oh man, that's okay. Eventually, you'll get there. It's doable. It's not that far from where you are, right? Because you're on the East Coast.
Well, I'm in North Carolina, so it's a trip.
It's like next door, basically.
Sure, North Carolina, Canada, we're right there together.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I would be curious what kind of cons that you guys are going to publicize Moonstruck. It would strike me that something like this would be perfect for Small Press Expo. Now, granted, Image is not a small press, but the kind of audience that attends SPX, I think, would really eat up Moonstruck.
Oh, yeah. We did SPX last year, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that was right after issue 2 came out.
Yeah.
We had a ton of fun.
We did really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. It's a very fun book to table with.
Well, are either of you working on anything else, maybe individually, in addition to Moonstruck, that you can share with us?
I'm working on a bunch of stuff that I can't share with you, which is the worst answer in the world. I worked on the season of Bravest Warriors. I have 2 episodes out right now and a 3rd on the way. Other than that, it's all under wraps, unfortunately.
Okay, well, that's understandable.
And I'm mostly just doing personal work. I, in college, tried bookbinding and, making comics that way. So I'm trying to get back into that now that I'm away from all the resources that let me do it easily. So we're just working on, doing more personal stuff. I'm trying to work on writing a bit too.
Yeah. Yeah, Shae.
Well, Shae, do you find that having worked now on this longer project, Moonstruck, you feel that you're starting to get your writing chops?
Maybe a little bit. I'm learning a lot from Grace and the way she sets stuff up in scripts and stuff, and just, like the storytelling process. So I'm trying to, use it as a learning experience too, and maybe bring it into my own personal work.
Aw, Shae, I didn't know that. I want to help.
Well, I'm glad I could tell you that.
That's great. So in addition to Lauren being your professor, Grace in some ways is your professor figure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that Shae is my professor as well. I've learned so much about storytelling from Shae and about how to craft a complete world. It's great.
Oh, make me blush. I'm glad I'm not on camera.
Yeah, we're an audio only podcast. But
nice.
you can illustrate yourself blushing.
Oh.
So when are we going to see the first issue of the next narrative arc?
That's a wonderful question.
April? I think it might be mid to late April.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Not sure of the exact date, though.
Yeah.
So as we record this, maybe another 2-3 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it makes this interview all the more timely then.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Grace and Shae, I want to thank the both of you for coming on the Comics Alternative and talking about your Image series, Moonstruck, the first volume of which, the trade, came out about a week and a half ago as we're recording this. And as you just mentioned, the next single issue of Moonstruck should be out in a few weeks.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you so much for having us. This was fun.
A big thanks once again to Grace Ellisand Shae Beagle for taking the time to talk with me for the show. And I'm sorry that Lauren McCubbin wasn't able to join us as originally planned. But remember, the first trade collection of Moonstruck is now out, and the second narrative arc begins next month. And a great way of jumping on board this series is by visiting the website of our sponsor, Discount Comic Book Service. There, you'll find the latest issue of Moonstruck, along with the first collected volume at incredible discounts. That's dcbservice.com. And after you do get your comics there, get in touch with me and let me know what you thought about my conversation with Grace and Shae. If you go to our website, comicsalternative.com, you'll find that you can leave us a voice message online via SpeakPipe. Or you can contact us the old-fashioned way by picking up your phone and dialing 4153-COMICS. That's 415-326-6427. You can also email the podcast. We're 2 guys at comicsalternative.com, or you can contact me directly. I'm Derek at comicsalternative.com. And we're all over social media. You can get in touch with us via Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Instagram, Google+, Goodreads, Pinterest, YouTube, Slack, and Discord. You can subscribe to the podcast through Apple Podcasts. You can stream us on Stitcher. You can also find us on Spotify, on TuneIn, on iHeartRadio, and on Google Play Music. But you can find every single one of our podcast episodes, as well as the reviews and comics-related commentary that we post on our blog, simply by going to our website, comicsalternative.com. We've got more interviews lined up in the days to come, so be sure to check back for those. Until then, take care.